Consanguinity. Consanguinity, literally meaning common blood, describes a family relationship between two individuals. Consanguinity is measured in terms of the degrees of consanguinity, which can be defined in several different ways. In general, the lower the degree of consanguinity, the closer the relationship, and thus the higher the level of consanguinity. The most common definition is the modern civil law definition, which increases by one with each step up or down along the shortest path between two individuals in a family tree. Thus, for example, you are 1 degree from either parent or from your own children. Two siblings are 2 degrees apart. One step up to the common parent, another back down to the sibling. This is also called the definition used in law. Various other definitions of degrees of consanguinity have been used in different times in law. In general, the lower the number of degrees of consanguinity, the higher the risk of inbreeding. Most cultures regard sexual relationships between people with high levels of consanguinity as incest and forbid marriages between such people. Consanguinity is a deeply rooted social trend among 1/5 of the world population, mostly residing in the Middle East, West Asia, and North Africa, as well as among immigrants from these communities now residing in various parts of the world. The mounting public awareness on prevention of congenital and genetic disorders in offspring is driving an increasing number of couples contemplating marriages and reproduction in highly consanguineous communities to seek counseling on consanguinity. Primary health care providers are faced with consanguineous couples demanding answers to their questions on the anticipated health risks to their offspring. Preconception and premarital counseling on consanguinity should be part of the training of healthcare providers, particularly in highly consanguineous populations. How to calculate consanguinity? Consanguinity can be calculated by looking at a consanguinity chart. Look at the chart now. For consanguineous relationship by blood, place the person for whom you need to establish relationship by consanguinity in the blank box. The labeled boxes will then list the relationships by title to the public person. Anyone in a box numbered 1, 2, or 3 is within the third degree of consanguinity. For affinity, relationship by marriage calculations. Place the spouse of the person for whom you need to establish relationship by affinity in the blank box. The labeled boxes will then list the relationships by title to the spouse and the degree of distance from the public by affinity. A husband and wife are related in the first degree by marriage. For other relationships by marriage, the degree is the same as the degree of underlying relationship by blood. A marriage with a direct line relative or collateral relative to the fourth degree is grounds for an annulment. In other words, you could not marry your first cousin, fourth degree, grandnephew, niece, fourth degree, but you could marry your first cousin once removed, fifth degree. Current trend in consanguineous marriages. It is estimated that 1 billion of the current global population live in communities with a preference for consanguineous marriage. Consanguineous marriage is traditional and respected in most communities of India, where intrafamilial unions collectively account for 20 to 50% of all marriages. Primary health care providers in communities with high consanguinity rates may be confronted by situations where they are asked to provide preconception counseling to consanguineous couples. In such situations and communities where cousin marriages are customary, many young couples nowadays present to healthcare providers seeking a scientifically sound answer to their questions, including, will our children be physically or mentally abnormal? How can we minimize the risk for having affected children? Reports have indicated that there may be inconsistencies in counseling for consanguinity among healthcare providers. It is important that primary healthcare providers, specifically in highly consanguineous communities, have clear evidence-based guidelines in counseling a consanguineous couple to minimize their risks for having affected offspring. This review aims to portray the definitions and current global trends of consanguinity and propose simple guidelines for preconception counseling related to consanguinity based on published studies of health burden and social benefits of consanguinity. Such data could guide healthcare providers and help consanguineous couples take informed decisions regarding their reproductive choices. Problems with consanguineous marriages. Blood-related marriages are called consanguineous marriages. Sanguine meaning blood. Around the globe, consanguineous marriages have been practiced by many societies from time immemorial. It is widely practiced in Asia, North Africa, Switzerland, Middle East, some parts of China, Japan, and fishermen communities in Europe and America. 1 in 2 rural marriages in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh are consanguineous. What type of marriages are consanguineous marriages? When you marry biologically related or blood relatives, then it is consanguineous marriage. Most commonly, in our part of the world, first cousins, uncle's son marries an auntie's daughter or vice versa. However, another type of marriage is where maternal uncle marries his niece, sister's daughter. Theoretical risk of having a genetic defect child is higher in the latter type of marriage than the former. Most of us do not even recognize the pros and cons of such marriages. While assessing the consequence of consanguineous against non-consanguineous, non-blood related marriages in health and disease, several scientific studies have shown that consanguinity leads to death of infants before, during, or immediately after birth, increased incidence of birth defects, genetic diseases, including blinding disorders, blood cancer, acute lymphocytic leukemia, breathing problems for children at birth, apnea, increased susceptibility to disease, etc. Some scientists contradict these studies and state that other biological factors could be accountable for the results and not consanguinity alone. Some animal studies have shown that inbreeding or consanguinity could enhance longevity. It has been proved beyond doubt that consanguineous marriages further than second cousins would not result in major genetic disease. There are certain misconceptions regarding marriage amongst relatives. Marriages between social relatives like wife's brother and husband's sister can get married where there is no role for blood relationship. Why do consanguineous marriages result in children with genetic diseases? Due to inheritance, parents and children and brothers and sisters commonly share 50% of their genetic makeup. Similarly, uncle and niece share 25% and first cousins 12.5% of their inherited genetic material as it originates from a common ancestor. In such situations, if there are any silent genetic defects, then such errors manifesting as a disease in the child or a consanguineous parents is high. Whereas, if we marry a person non-consanguineously in a random manner, then for both the partners to share the same silent genetic defect is extremely rare. Hindus in northern India as a practice outlawed the consanguineous marriage by avoiding the same gotra or patrilineal relationship between the probable bride and the groom. In some of the Western countries, including the United States, consanguinity closer than the first cousins are considered to be legally incest. Historically, closest consanguineous marriages were performed between brothers and sisters by the preserve the royal blood, and interestingly, Cleopatra was born out of such marriage. However, this disgusting practice has never been duplicated anywhere in the world. It is sad to note that many movies in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh highlight and glorify consanguinity. Evidence suggests that consanguinity does play a negative role in human health. The social benefits of consanguinity should not outweigh the biological damages. Many in the community are ignorant about these facts. Global consanguinity trends. In populations of North Africa, West Asia, and South India, consanguineous marriages are culturally and socially favored and constitute 20 to 50% of all marriages, with first cousin unions accounting for almost 1/3 of all marriages. The prevalence of consanguinity and rates of first cousin marriage vary widely within and between populations and communities depending on ethnicity, religion, culture, and geography. Consanguineous marriages are also practiced among immigrant communities from highly consanguineous countries and regions such as Pakistan, Turkey, North Africa, and Lebanon, now resident in Europe, North America, and Australia. The high consanguinity rates, coupled by the large family size in some communities, could induce the expression of autosomal recessive diseases, including very rare or new syndromes, which increase the public awareness of the risks associated with consanguineous marriages. Currently, many young consanguineous couples planning to have children seek preconception genetic counseling for fear of the consequences of consanguinity on their offspring. In South Indian population, consanguineous marriages are culturally and socially favored and constitute 20 to 50% of all marriages, with first cousin unions accounting for almost 1/3 of all marriages. The prevalence of consanguinity and rates of first cousin marriage vary widely within and between populations and communities depending on ethnicity, religion, culture, and geography. Why are consanguineous marriages culturally favored? The actual reasons given for the preference of consanguineous marriages are primarily social. In communities with high consanguinity rates, sociological studies indicate that consanguineous marriage could enforce the couple's stability due to higher compatibility between husband and wife who share the same social relationships after marriage as before marriage, as well as the compatibility between the couple and other family members. Consanguineous marriage may be more favorable for the woman's status, including the wife's better relationship with her in-laws who could support her in time of need. There is a general belief that marrying within the family reduces the possibilities of hidden uncertainties in health and financial issues. It is believed that consanguinity strengthens family ties and enforces family solidarity, with cousin marriage providing excellent opportunities for the transmission of cultural values and cultural continuity. Premarital negotiations regarding financial matters of marriage are more easily conducted and sometimes less costly. Wife's parents prefer to have their daughter living near them and to enjoy the presence of the grandchildren. Moreover, wealthy landlords may prefer to keep their property within the family. Consanguinity and health parameters. Healthcare providers and genetic specialists could consider both the negative impact of consanguineous marriage in terms of increased genetic risks to the offspring as opposed to the potential social and economic benefits. The reproductive health criteria related to consanguinity show that in first cousin marriages as opposed to non-consanguineous marriages, fertility rate is slightly higher, abortion rate is not different, stillbirths and infant mortality rates are slightly higher, and birth defect frequency is estimated to be around 2 to 3% points more than the background rate among newborns in the general population, around 2 to 3%. Furthermore, consanguineous unions lead to increased expression of autosomal recessive disorders. The offspring of consanguineous unions may be at increased risk for recessive disorders because of the expression of autosomal recessive gene mutations inherited from a common ancestor. The closer the biological relationship between parents, the greater is the probability that the offspring will inherit identical copies of one or more detrimental recessive genes. For example, first cousins are predicted to share 12.5%, that is, 1/8 of their genes. Most of the literature studying the association of Down syndrome with parental consanguinity concluded that no such association existed. The association of consanguineous marriages with late onset complex diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular disorders, and cancer requires further studies to precise any existing risks because currently unambiguous evidence-based conclusions are difficult to establish. Preconception and premarital counseling for consanguinity. Preconception genetic counseling for consanguinity is considered one of the important pillars amongst the community genetic services in highly consanguineous populations. Premarital counseling is another increasingly demanded service in some countries and communities where consanguinity rates are still high and selective abortion of affected fetus is not feasible and or not acceptable. Marriage in many countries is regarded as a family decision and not just the couple's decision, although the frequency of arranged marriages may be declining in the recent years due to the increasing number of females reaching university-level education, which gives them a broader choice of marriage partner. Many marriages, whether both interfamilial or intrafamilial, consanguineous, are however still considered arranged marriages in some communities. The term arranged marriage does not mean that the marriage is planned against the will or acceptance of either partner, but it basically implies that a certain suitable couple is given the option of getting married under the family supervision. Among marriages contracted from 1969 to 1979, 73.3% of 1983 marriages were arranged through partners' agreement first and then the couple's consent. Premarital genetic counseling is obligatory for all couples with a history of genetic complications and in case of consanguinity. Premarital counseling is also frequent in some countries offering population-based genetic counseling. Premarital genetic counseling poses unique challenges and opportunities in such countries where the tradition of consanguinity is likely to persist. Proposed steps in preconception counseling for a consanguineous couple. In offering preconception counseling for consanguinity, it is crucial to distinguish between families with a known genetic or inherited disorder and those with no known such disorder by taking a detailed family history and constructing a 4-generation pedigree, including offspring, siblings, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and first cousins. Reports have shown that in certain clinical settings, practice guidelines regarding collecting information on consanguinity as part of family history are not available despite the relevance of such history in identifying at-risk pregnancies. Specific questions addressed to the couple could help in eliciting the presence of a genetic or hereditary disorder in the extended family. The higher risk for infant mortality could be mentioned to the couple, although practically speaking, it is very difficult for the counselor to give the accurate percentage because the risk depends on the general population parameters which are not always known. Individual studies can give different risk figures indicated by various factors, including factors inherent to the studied populations. For example, in Norway, the risk of stillbirth and infant deaths among first cousin couples was 1.7 times that for the unrelated parents. When a consanguineous couple presents to the genetic counseling clinic because they know that they have a genetic disorder in their family, a stepwise procedure is attempted, starting with construction of a pedigree and taking a detailed family history. Several reports have emphasized the importance of constructing an extended family tree, usually 3 generations, as a tool to discover genetic diseases in the family and in some cases to elicit the modes of inheritance. Social and educational barriers in counseling for consanguinity. In some communities, organizational and social barriers prevent collecting information about consanguinity in primary health care settings and in midwifery practice, restricting identification of at-risk pregnancies. The belief that inherited disorders can only arise through cousin marriages on the paternal side of the family is also quite common, and in the minds of many people, consanguinity may refer only to paternal blood relationships. Thus, during counseling, if a couple indicate that they are not related, it is imperative or specifically inquire about any shared biological relationships on their mother's side of the families. In similar vein, families may opt to avoid cousin marriages when the disease is inherited as autosomal dominant and are bewildered and confused by the subsequent birth of an affected baby. Education of the public in general and of primary health personnel in particular is an important pillar in clarifying the health and social effects of consanguineous marriages. The balance between the possible biological risks of consanguinity and the social benefits, including the non-stigmatization of the female partner in a society with minimal genetic literacy, could vary among different couples and different settings. In rural communities, the social benefits of consanguineous marriages could outweigh their impact on health, and vice versa in urban communities. A point that draws much debate is whether clear guidelines can be adopted in certain situations where counselors are allowed to advise rather than just give risk estimates. Consanguinity is a deeply rooted social trend with 1 billion people currently living in countries where consanguineous marriages are customary, and among them, 1 in every 3 marriages is between cousins. The rising public awareness on possible preventive measures for congenital disorders has led to an augmentation in the number of couples seeking preconception and premarital counseling on consanguinity. Consanguineous marriages are associated with an increased risk for congenital malformations and autosomal recessive diseases, with some resultant increased postnatal mortality in the offspring of first cousin couples, but demographic and socio-economic confounders need to be well controlled. No major adverse associations with reproductive parameters such as miscarriages and fertility have been documented. Associations with quantitative traits and complex adult onset diseases are vague and inconsistent, suggesting the importance of implementing future research in this area. To standardize genetic services, guidelines for screening consanguineous couples and their offspring are needed. Consideration could be given to screening based on common autosomal recessive conditions in the populations and communities. In both high and low income countries, there is a capacity to provide health education for consanguinity at individual, family, and community levels delivered by primary health care personnel with preconceptions and premarital genetic counseling and diagnosis, rather than discouraging consanguineous marriages in populations with long held such tradition. Ensuring access to preconception and premarital counseling services is the logical way to proceed, and more likely both to receive community acceptance and be successful in maintaining and improving health. Increasing public literacy on consanguinity could be achieved by providing proper education and training to primary health care workers on all health and social issues related to consanguinity.